Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we are talking about the Oath of the Spelldrinker Paladin from Griffon's Saddlebag Book 2. They sponsored an entire series going over all 12 of the subclasses.
So thanks to them.
So check out their stuff, guys. If you want to get access to all those subclasses right now and tons of extra stuff, become a Patreon member. Or if you just want the subclasses, go ahead and pre-order the book now. You can do that. Follow the link down below. But yeah, if you're new to the channel, what we're going to do is go through all the abilities gained in the subclass, rate it based on its roleplay, combat, and synergy based on the abilities gained, how they improve on the base class abilities. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to end in our D&D Beyond Players Bundle giveaway.
Free stuff is wonderful.
All that out of the way, let's just jump straight into it. Alex, what do we get?
Well, we are a paladin, so the only very, very important thing to remember with paladins are their tenets. It's because it's every subclass in books, whether unofficial or official, always give kind of a little paragraph description of what the subclass is about.
Right.
But paladins, because of their tenets, are very specific. These are the kind of rules and guidelines that they're to live by. And if they were to break those, you can hold the concept of the Oathbreaker Paladin and why it exists. There's no such thing as a Oathbreaker Ranger and other things. It's just Paladin. So for that, it is be the sword, be the shield, and be the spell. I want to say be the ball. That's what my brain immediately goes to. But yeah, so it is very much the anti-mage, Mage Slayer, anti-magic paladin. So again, Mage Slayer feat comes into mind, of course. But yeah. On the spells, we also get access to Bane, Detect Magic, Arcanist Magic Aura, Hold Person, Dispel Magic, Slow, Dimension Door, love that for a paladin, Resilient Sphere, Dominate Person, and Scrying. So a combination of some RP and combat spells that normally paladins wouldn't have access to.
Right. You might be a little surprised that you don't see a counterspell on there, because typically with these kind of subclasses, you're going to have counterspell, but we have our Channel Divinity options.
Wait about that.
So with the Channel Divinity options at level 3, we get two different ones. The first is Absorb Magic. You can refute certain spells and use them to nourish yourself. Using your Channel Divinity, you can interrupt a creature you can see within 30 feet of you casting a spell. You can use a reaction when you see a creature within range casting a spell to present your holy symbol to interrupt it. The spell fails and has no effect if it is of a level no higher than 1 plus your paladin level divided by 3, rounded up, to a maximum of 6th level spells. When it does, you gain a number of temp HP equal to your charisma modifier plus 5 times the spell's level.
Yes.
So, kind of like a counterspell.
Yes.
There's a limitation on the top end of it.
Yep.
But you also get some temp HP on top of it.
But you're not using a spell slot. You have to use a higher spell slot to counter the spell. It's just that as you level up as a paladin, you become more adept at doing it, which is great. We love abilities that scale up as you go. Yes,
and so far this book has been very good about scaling abilities, which big fans of that.
I think they've been watching some of our stuff.
Maybe, who knows? Then your second option on here is Expeditious Command. Use the Channel Divinity to issue a word of power. As a bonus action, you choose a number of creatures within 30 feet of you up to your charisma modifier, minimum of 1. Until the start of your next turn, the chosen creatures can use a bonus action to take either dash or disengage action. As part of using your Channel Divinity in this way, you can also take either the dash or disengage action. So basically, you're just giving everyone access to a dash or disengage within a range of you. I mean, you're Paladin. You're already going to be trying to keep people in your aura ranges anyway, so you're probably going to be kind of in the mix of stuff as is. That's going to be a way to help your party get into or out of circumstances.
And for a lot of, if you have players in your group like players in our group, it's definitely going to be the need to get out of trouble. They can get into trouble on their own, as we found out again the other night. Starting at level 3, you also get a bonus proficiency in the Arcana skill. Makes sense. And then at level 7, we get Aura of Disruption. Whenever a hostile creature ends its turn within 10 feet of you while concentrating on a spell, it must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against your Paladin spell save DC or lose concentration on the spell. In addition, you and friendly creatures within 10 feet of you can't be perceived by magical scrying sensors. Cool, it has both an RP and a combat effect. Very nice. And of course, as always, the Paladin, almost always, the Paladin Aura extends out to 30 feet at level 18.
There you go. Before we get on to the last two abilities of the subclass, I want to give another quick shout out to our second sponsor today, which is the Humblewood Tales Kickstarter. We have 5 new adventures from levels 3 to 8. We have pre-made characters. You have tons of magic items, lore expanding on the Humblewood universe, a very different, unique setting if you want to get away from the typical fantasy tropes.
Yeah, and with a smaller, lower-level campaign, great way for somebody in your group who maybe isn't quite comfortable with the idea of creating their own campaign from scratch. A great way to kind of dip your toe into the process of being a DM.
Don't want to miss out on this one, guys. Link down below. That being said, Level 15, we get Armored Focus. While you are concentrating on a paladin spell, your concentration can't be broken as a result of taking damage.
Wonderful.
So for most intents and purposes, it's pretty much just going to be unbreakable.
It's going to take you being knocked unconscious,
put to sleep,
or put to sleep.
There are ways to break concentration, but damage is
90% of the time it's damage.
Very much. And then lastly, as all paladins get, their level 20 ability, Arcane Conduit. As an action, you can emanate a field of crackling magic in a 30-foot radius. For 1 minute, you gain the following benefits. You have resistance to damage from spells and have advantage on saving throws against spells. Whenever a creature hits you with a melee attack, that creature takes force damage equal to your charisma modifier as magical energy lashes out at them. And then lastly, when you expend a spell slot of first level or higher, friendly creatures in the field regain a number of hit points equal to your charisma modifier, while hostile ones take force damage equal to the same amount instead. So, some major impact.
And I think it's very, before we get to the scoring, I do want to emphasize there that it does say expend a spell slot. It does not say cast a spell of first level higher. So you're using a spell slot for your divine smites.
Yep.
You're still going to get that trigger as well, which is very important because I think a lot of paladins, that's kind of a go-to for your spell slots. Unless you're wanting an AoE effect or like a buff spell or a heal spell.
Yeah, especially or a concentration spell.
Or a whole person. You want to get in there and use that extra damage for burst like few other martial classes get to do.
Yes, and of course it is a once-a-day feature, regained on long rest. But all that being said, those are the abilities gained in the subclass, so we'll move on into the rating portion of the video. First up is the roleplay value, asterisk, as always. Talking about roleplay, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside of the initiative order.
Yes.
Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background. That's on you as a player. We can't rate you, but we can rate the abilities gained in the subclass and how they might improve your potential in those roleplay scenarios.
That's right.
So, all that being said here, we have a pretty solid roleplay spell list on here with Detect Magic, Magic Aura, Dispel Magic, even like Slow could come into play sometimes.
Especially in pursuits of things.
Yes. Dominate Person, Scry, awesome spells for roleplay. Now, you're a half-caster on here being a paladin, but having access to those spells is always nice to have when you need them. Expeditious command for your Channel Divinity can be a great way for chases or avoiding combats if you're trying to disengage or just get extra distance, close a distance, or increase a distance to or from enemies. Can help you avoid stuff, or even, if there's a trap that, you're trying to get to a thing before a door closes or whatever, there's ways. Whenever you have increased movement can definitely help in roleplay. The bonus Arcana proficiency is nice.
Sure.
Free proficiencies are always welcome.
I'm not going to complain about it.
It is what it is on there. And then the aura against scrying protection is nice to have. It's more on the niche side. I mean, how often are you really going to be scryed on by enemies?
Yeah. It's gonna come later up where you be encountering some powerful casters in your campaign where they may have that ability. But if you're not fighting a lot of casters in general, or you're not dealing with them, this is a problem for the whole subclass as a whole, but definitely for that aura part as well.
Right. So with that, if you're trying to have a private conversation, you could all kind of huddle up together until you're level 18. Of course, when it's 30 foot, it's not as much of an issue. But you kind of huddle up and have a little private conversation that you don't have to worry about the potential of someone spying on you. Yeah. So there is some niche use on there as well. Overall, some solid options, but there's some limitations on here, just the way that it's built. So with that, we gave it a 3.5 out of 5 for the roleplay.
Yeah, and always with the tenants helping it out just a little bit as well. Onto the combat side of things, where this is a lot like any kind of very specialized, as far as mechanical subclass, whereas you're definitely the anti-magic person in your party, to where if you are fighting a lot of casters or things, with innate spell casting and things, you can be an absolute menace. If you're limited to that, this becomes kind of limiting. So this is where it kind of becomes a difficult thing for us to score, because it's so campaign dependent, not in terms of environment like some other subclasses are, or like Ranger is in general, with its exploration and favored terrain, all that kind of stuff. It's just, what percentage of your combatants you're facing against are casters.
Right.
But the fact that you do have access to a lot of this stuff does create a lot of good opportunities for you. Getting access to slow, giving yourself Dimension Door to really cover a huge gap of distance where normally a paladin would not be able to do such a thing. Right. The fact that you can cast Hold Person on something, and then once you hit 15, your concentration can't be broken by damage. You and any other melee person in your group can just go wail on somebody. Is wonderful. The Absorb Magic Channel Divinity is easily one of the better Channel Divinity options any Paladin subclass has gotten access to, of ones we have seen. Just because it doesn't take you your spell slots to cast up. And as a Paladin, you're only going to cap out at level 5 spell slots. So there's no such thing as casting counter spells and automatically succeeding on anything bigger than that. And just the number of spell slots you have, you can't cast it all the time. Well, Channel Divinity is smaller number of use because it is once per rest, but it's not taking any of your spell slots, and it does just scale up with you passively as you go, and it also gives you some temporary hit points on the back end too. So it's got
survivability.
So some nice survivability on that as well. If you really needed, if you guys got, you and your party got overwhelmed, you could use that Expedius command to, get everybody gets to disengage or dash out of trouble and take off. Or like you're trying to run down somebody at the start of combat, make sure they're running from you to get into that combat. It also works the same way. Your aura, again, the fact that you can end the concentration on a spell. A lot of the Paladin auras, they're kind of just helpful for you for the most part. That first 10 feet, because the chances of you being within range of multiple things, just a 10-foot radius, not so much. But if you're trying to run down a caster on there, you're going to make his day very awful. And of course, your Capstone, giving you a chance to have a resistance to damage from spells, advantage on saving throws against spells, is wonderful. It's amazing. Then you're doing force damage, which is one of those top 2 damage types in the game because nothing resists it, and giving you and your own party back healing based on when you spend your spell slots either to cast Paladin spells or to do your Divine Smites. Gives you a lot of good options. And it has like a lot of positive stuff. There's a lot of positive stuff. Again, it's just only limited by the number of casters you fight. Right. So score-wise, we went with a 4 out of a possible 5, just because it is super potent against casters. It's just the question is how many casters are you actually going to be facing on a regular basis?
Right. And I think one other thing to mention too is the reliable concentration at 15. Yeah. Is going to be really good just for spells like Elemental Weapon for yourself or
Hold
Crusader's
Person.
Mantle. Yeah, Hold Person if you know they're having issues with the saves.
Yep.
Crusader's Mantle, just to give a buff that your party's going to really pretty benefit for multiple turns. Most likely, it's going to be very rare that you're going to be able to have that concentration be broken. So it's going to be really nice to have some solid buff, uses and ways to make sure it sticks for multiple turns. So that is really nice and a solid spell list, of course, as well. So some interesting stuff for sure on the combat side. Moving into the synergy, and the last part on here, you have a pretty well-rounded spell list, some utility, but again, you're half-caster, so you got to be a little bit more cautious on there. And of course, you have your smites and stuff, so there's lots of ways for you to spend those spell slots very quickly. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind.
I'm waiting for the pro magic paladin whose Channel Divinity just gives them arcane recovery to get spell slots back.
Yeah, right. Oh, maybe we should make something. Tuck that one away.
Put that in the back pocket.
All right. The Channel Divinity options, speaking of, are pretty nice, but they can be a little niche as well. It's never really a bad thing to have the option for a disengage or a group-wide disengage or engage, basically. So that is nice a lot of times, but then, of course, it's very situational with the casters on the other side of it. But when it does work, it's going to be great. The aura, again, is going to be really good or completely worthless, just depending on circumstances, which can be, it is what it is. When it does work, it's going to be massive. It's just going to be super annoying for casters to deal with. And if there's no casters, you don't have an aura, basically.
Yeah, basically, no. Mm-mm.
So there is that. And then bonus to concentration, again, is just ridiculous. It's very strong. But, again, as paladins are, if you're going to play a paladin, just have to throw this in every once in a while. Paladins are high-level campaign characters.
They really are.
They don't get most paladins don't really get much of anything until level 15. Yeah. So, if your campaign is not going to go to or start around level 15, you may want to reconsider being a paladin because your effectiveness...
at least as your main. It's still, if you're wanting the heavy armor, the martial weapons, and you want to kind of be in melee, have access to some spells, you can argue for paladin dips for certain things.
Right. And they do have a pretty solid base class.
But
you're not getting much from your subclasses until, after level 7, you're pretty much done until 15. And even at 7, a lot of times, it's not much. And your Channel Divinity options really aren't that great for a lot of subclasses, too. So.
Bards feel that pain, too.
Yeah, they can for sure.
Because they get a lot of quality stuff. A lot of times, there's just very few levels where they get much from their subclass, but because their base class gives them so
6 to
much.
14, yeah, it's a big gap.
Yeah.
So sorcerers, same kind of deal in
there.
But not quite as much. No, clerics though.
Let's talk about it.
Anyways, not talking about those classes. All the things on here with the paladin, pretty solid. A little bit of nicheness. We went with a 4 as well in the synergy. So really good options when they do work. It's going to be very, very potent. But you have to have the right circumstances to run into those situations.
For this to be hitting on all cylinders and be just feel borderline busted, you got to be fighting multiple casters at a time, which you get into the higher levels becomes more and more likely as you run into more things at higher CR, even have innate spell casting if they aren't like true like casters kind of thing. Yeah, things like that.
But yeah, those are our thoughts today, guys. Thank you again to our sponsors, Griffon Saddlebag.
Yes.
High quality, awesome stuff coming from them. Some great subclasses so far, and more really good ones coming up.
Yeah, we're doing this in alphabetical order, obviously. But we definitely, some of the best ones are coming toward the end.
Yeah, so stay tuned for those. Another place for high quality content, Hit Point Press.
That's right.
Consistently good stuff coming from them. Do not miss out on Humblewood Tales, guys. Awesome setting, awesome lore, high quality art, content.
And a chance to break away from the traditional fantasy setting if you so choose and get to play with adorable animals.
So guys, check out those. They're awesome, high quality content coming from you. We always give you guys options for high quality stuff.
Yes.
So check that out. You won't regret it. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.